Okay, I'm just gonna do a quick live stream to get some things clear. As everybody knows, my sister passed away on Halloween, and I want to thank everybody for the condolences that you have given me and my family. I really appreciate those condolences you've given me and my family. So I'm holding up as we go along. And I wanted to give you viewers a little something because I'm going to try to get back on track. Now, you guys know that I make videos practically every day, but I had to stop because of my sister's passing. And now I want to try to get back on track a bit, get back to doing videos, but so I'm going to be making an appearance on Gavin Richard Presents, also known as Gboot 2786, and I'll be on his show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. So if you want to hear me talk about stuff, I will be on his show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. and I will leave a link. All right. You guys can go over to his channel and sub his channel. And we're going to be, I guess, talking about random stuff on tomorrow night show. And I'm going to be doing a live stream on Friday at 10 p.m. And I'll finally be talking about racism in the comic book industry. And that's a subject that I'm very passionate about. And Art Belfield on Facebook, he talked about how no one really talked about it, but I've done blogs on it. And I believe I could do a full stream on it in depth that could really educate people on the whole issues as related to racism in the comic book industry. So that's one you definitely want to look at. And that's one I'm really passionate about doing. So that one I'm really doing in conjunction with the promotion for, excuse me, Easting Blast from the Past, which is a book featuring the first comic on the SJS Direct imprint, Inside Easting No Good Deed. And you can pick this book up in paperback on Amazon today. But I'll leave a link to that in the chat. And I really would love everybody to just try out, my first comic. So that book is available in paperback. You can pre-order the Kindle right now. So this one is going to be dropping on Black Friday on Kindle, but you can get it on paperback right now. And Bill did the fantastic job on the comic, so really want you guys to come out here and try it. Thank you all again for the condolences. And I'm going to get on tonight's topic. Now, many of my viewers have been asking me what I thought regarding the 2020 election, and I really don't see a winner, even though we have a projected winner as related to this election. When I take a critical examination of our country is in a very, very disturbing place at this point. Now, I've made live streams about America being in decline. And when I look at this whole election cycle, we have really had a serious decline as related to morals, as related to ethics. We've had a serious decline in terms of decorum and even the way we treat each other. And that's something that really, it just makes me really sad because, it used to be when we had elections, it wasn't really personal. This Trump Biden election, it just got so nasty it was the nastiest election I have ever seen on record. And I grew up with the Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, the Michael Dukakis, George Bush, the George Bush, Bill Clinton, the Bill Clinton, Bob Dole, the Al Gore, George W. Bush, John Kerry, George W. Bush, and the John McCain, Barack Obama, and your Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. And it was always civil to a point in these presidential contests that I grew up with. And many of these politicians, they never really got this personal to the point where they were going into ad hominem attacks and just getting into just such hostility. I mean, I have never seen a campaign like this in my life. And it's like this campaign was practically in the sewer in terms of ethics and decorum. And on both sides, I'm not really seeing any sort of civility or ethics whatsoever. And that was one of the sad things for me as I watched this election cycle is that it wasn't about the business of trying to help the country. It was all about making things so personal that we didn't focus on trying to deal with the issues at hand. So there was no real focus on the issues. It was just all about getting the people's feelings into it. And it wasn't really about any of the candidates presenting us with a vision for where they wanted to take the country or a direction they wanted to take the country. It was just, you shouldn't vote for this guy because he's Donald Trump on the Biden side, and Donald Trump just talking about Creepy Joe and Sleepy Joe. And that's not what a campaign for the president should be. I mean, the president is the leader of the executive branch. He is the leader of the country that's supposed to represent the free world. And you would think you would get something civil as related to the way your presidential candidates would present themselves. And you would think that they would actually come up with a comprehensive plan for where they want to take the country in 4 years. Because when I take a look at this country, it's in a very bad place. We're very divided, and people really are out here and they're not getting their needs met by a government that's supposed to represent we the people. I mean, the Constitution says that the first three words in it are we the people. And it seems like your politicians are disconnected from we the people. It seems like they're not listening to we the people. And as this pandemic has been going on, they have left us in limbo, similar to what your Barack Obama did back in 2009 when he let the Senate go on vacation and the House go on vacation and left people like myself without an unemployment benefits extension being signed. It was all about them and not about us, the people who elected them. And it's really something that people really need to take a real hard look at, because what we're seeing from our politicians is that they're serving themselves and they're not serving we the people. So that's one of the things that I found to be really troubling as related to this election cycle, is that the politicians were not serving we the people. They had practically abandoned us during one of the worst pandemics in the 21st century, and they've practically acted like people out here don't matter. I mean, people out here, you have half the country out of work. You have a lot of people out here who are unable to pay their bills. And you have this disconnect between the politicians who are supposed to be able to meet the people's needs, and they just don't care. And they don't care. And that's something that I was disgusted about, because you went out here and created a policy that practically destroyed the lives of over 300 million people by following the advice of so called experts like your Dr. Fauci and the head of the WHO, who told us, oh, we need to shelter in place and we need to close all these so called non essential businesses. And now all of these people are out of work. And instead of their government looking to meet their needs, they all went out here to get their needs met by running for office. And they practically abandoned the American people. And we're supposed to wait until an election is over in order for them to meet our needs. And that's a big middle finger up at we the people, as I see it, because we should have been put first. But most people are thinking, oh, it's about the election. And it should not have been about the election. It should have been about meeting the needs of we the people. Now, that's where I see that your Joe Biden and your Donald Trump have practically failed in terms of this campaign. They have forgotten we the people, and the Congress has forgotten we the people, and it's become all about this Donald Trump. And I talked about this in a video I did called America's Trump Obsession, and it seems like everybody had gotten tunnel vision as related to your Donald Trump. And this tunnel vision, as I see it, as related to Donald Trump, made it where we did not get an effective response to the pandemic as related to COVID-19. And we really didn't get a clear vision from the left as related to how they were going to run their candidate. And when I look at the way the whole COVID-19 pandemic has been mishandled here in the United States, I believe that the Trump obsession had something to do with it, because everybody has really, they have not really thought about, I mean, people have had issues with Republican candidates like George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., and it never got as personal as this, to the point where people were just in their feelings to the point where you couldn't even have a rational discussion. As a kid, I used to see people, they would have their issues with Ronald Reagan, but they could always look at him objectively. And they had their issues with George H.W. Bush, and they could still see him objectively. But in this case, with this Donald Trump, everything was just so personal that you could not get any sort of, rational discourse as related to setting a course for COVID-19, because everybody was trying to use the pandemic as a way to get back at Donald Trump on the left. And again, that Trump obsession, that's something that I believe is going to leave lasting scars on the country, because this Trump obsession, as I see it, it's really changed a lot of people. Now, when I think about the changes American people are going through, I go back to the movie, that 2002's Spider-Man, which was directed by Sam Raimi, and I remember a scene where Cliff Robertson, who was playing Ben Parker, is talking to Peter Parker, and Peter Parker is talking about puberty and changes, and he says to him, I'm going through some changes, and Ben Parker tells Peter Parker, be careful of who you change into. And that's something I want people on the left to really think about, who they've changed into, because who you've changed into is a monster. I mean, people talk about, Trump supporters being these racists and these bigots, but I can see a different type of darkness inside of many of the leftists who say that they are so all about diversity and inclusion. They say they're all about those things, but I can see how they've become twisted by this whole obsession with Donald Trump, because when you're obsessed, you don't really see boundaries, you don't see where you're going, and you don't see what you're becoming, because that was a lesson I learned back when I was working at Strive in the year 2000 about what happens when you cross over to the other side. And the scary part is you don't even know you've done it. All you know is you're over here and you're in a place that you really wish you weren't in because you've made all sorts of ethical compromises, all sorts of moral compromises, and your spirit has become so corrupted that you don't even know who you are anymore. So that's where I see a lot of people who have this anger at Donald Trump. They don't see where they are and they don't see what they have become because they sit there and they're talking about, oh, Donald Trump is a racist, Donald Trump is a bigot. We have to stop Donald Trump because he represents the evil that is out here, but they don't see the evil on their part. And that's something that takes me back to something Jesus pointed out about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, these were supposed to be the holy men in Rome, but they couldn't see their own sin. And that's why Jesus called them out, because these were supposed to be the so-called righteous men, and they were more evil than many of the sinners Jesus came to save, because they thought they were holier than everyone. They thought they were better than everyone. And that hypocrisy is lost on many on the left, as I saw it, over the course of the last 2-3 years. When I look at the way a lot of these people were acting, especially during the summertime with the murder of George Floyd, I look at groups like Black Lives Matter, groups like Antifa. They talk about the Proud Boys, but you doing the exact same thing, and you're participating in the exact same type of evil, and you don't see where you're going wrong because you're so fixated on one man and so obsessed with showing the evil of that one man, you can't see the evil you're doing, and you think you're justified because you're so-called woke. But when I look at you from the eyes of somebody who is outside and from a godly perspective, I can see the exact same evil going on. And that's another troubling thing for me as related to this election cycle. Nobody is looking at the evil on the other side. They're just thinking, oh, he's so good because he represents this so-called tolerance. But the irony is that your Joe Biden, when you look at him and his running mate Kamala Harris, they represent the exact same things that Donald Trump is allegedly been accused of, and they've actually committed those policies. So I look at that side of it, and that's one of the things that really troubles me. And the other thing that I look at is that most Americans really don't really want to look at how they have changed, and they don't really want to look at the dark mirror that is being reflected at them. Because the thing for me with this whole 2020 election is that dark mirror. Your Donald Trump was elected not by a outside group. He was elected by we the people. And that's something that flies over the heads of most Americans out here. They want to talk about how Donald Trump is this evil person, but the critical question is, who elected Donald Trump? And most people really need to start thinking about that dark mirror that was reflected at us over the last 4 years, because that's what we really need to sit down and take a look at, because your president is a reflection of we the people. And what I see going on with this election is most people did not like the dark truths that were being reflected back at them. They did not like seeing the reality that was presented to them. That picture was just too painful for them to endure. And that picture was just too much for them to handle. But as a Black man, I have lived with that dark reflection of America. I have looked at that dark reflection of America, and I've accepted that dark reflection of America that most people couldn't handle with your Donald Trump. I live with that practically every day, and I know that that's the true America. And most Americans, they don't want to change from that dark reflection. They just want to pull away from that dark reflection. And that's why you have Joe Biden, the projected winner of as president, because people don't want to look in that mirror and deal with that pain and really help this country grow. Because if you really want to make America a great country, you're going to have to take a look at that dark reflection being presented to you regarding this country and what's going on here as related to the way we, the people, have been treated. I mean, the dark reflection on both the left and the right sides show us that we, the people, have been placed last, and we live in a country that is racist and gynocentric and is misandristic and is very, very anti-black man. These are horrible truths that people don't want to accept about the United States. They don't want to accept these dark truths that Donald Trump presented to us in his presidency. They don't want to look at how our country, which is supposed to be the group or country that's supposed to be the richest nation, filled with the most educated citizens, and supposed to be a place where there's supposed to be all of these great intellectuals, that people really are petty, greedy, arrogant, and we have a lot of things we needed to work on. And the only way you can work on those things is if you acknowledge the problems that are going on. But instead of acknowledging problems, just like most Americans usually do, they'd rather deny the problems and try to make it look like they're so tolerant of things, but they're not tolerant of things at all. What they want to do is, as I've stated in many videos and live streams, go back to the smooth world, go back to themselves being comfortable, go back to a world where they don't have to deal with problems, don't have to deal with obstacles, and don't have to deal with other people's problems like racism for black men and black women. They don't want to deal with those problems. So they talk about minorities and inclusion when there are efforts to exclude black men from the job market, even as we speak right now, whether it be a Trump presidency or a Biden presidency. We don't want to deal with the problems. And instead of us taking a look at that dark reflection in the mirror as to the true United States, what most people want to do is regress and go back to the era of hope and change, because that's what your Joe Biden really represents to me. It's an effort to try to go back, to turn the clock back to the era of hope and change, and try to deny all of the mounting problems that came up during that era of so-called greatness that people want to subscribe to the Obama presidency. But that presidency really showed us how people were in deep denial about racism, because if we were serious about dealing with racism, Barack Obama would have dealt with George Zimmerman, and that would have set the boundary that would have prevented your Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. Because had we done something about George Zimmerman, that would have shown that the country was actually making progress, because we would have punished that suburban commando, let him know that he was not going to take a black man's life and devalue it just because he didn't fit into his smooth world, and that racist would be put in line. But that didn't happen, and that what we got was the rise of Donald Trump, and we got the rise of this dark period in American history that most people are probably going to try to sweep under the rug and act like never happened. It's sort of like Germany between 1939 and 1945. I remember an episode of Family Guy where Brian was in Germany and he said, why don't you talk about that period between 1939 and 1945? And we're going to get the same thing in America. What about that period between 2016 and 2020? That's what we're going to get. And people are going to deny that period instead of saying, hey, we need to look in the mirror at ourselves and look at the way we treated each other during this dark period. And we really need to take a look at where our country is at this point, because we didn't become great in those 4 years. And we didn't, the reason why we didn't become great is because we didn't want to go through the pain in order to grow to greatness. Because in order to achieve actual greatness, you're going to have to go through some pain. And sadly, the American people just didn't want to go through that pain. They did not want to take that look in the mirror at themselves, see who they truly were, and see what they had become over the course of the 8 years of the Obama presidency that led to the rise of the Trump presidency. Because looking in that mirror and seeing what really happened with this country, that's something Americans don't want to do. They don't want to look in that mirror and say, hey, this is who we are. I mean, it's very similar to what people in the civil rights movement didn't want to do. Whereas we were having these marches and protests for civil rights, people didn't want to look in that dark mirror, and they didn't want to look at themselves. They just kept denying it until they saw it on television, and people were just calling Americans out on their hypocrisy. And here we have it again. People don't want to look in that mirror and say, this is the state of our country, and this state of our union. It shows that we're not standing up for the principles of our U.S. Constitution. We want, and the sad part is, most Americans talk about wanting greatness, but they don't want to do the work to achieve greatness. That's another aspect as related to the dark reflection, as related to the Trump presidency. People don't want to look at that aspect because, again, achieving the American dream was all about hard work. But then you had Donald Trump coming in talking about making America great again, but Americans just didn't want to do the great work that would be required to go out here and get things done, because we always want something fast, something quick, something easy, and that's not how things work in the real world. That's not how goals are met. That's not how goals are achieved. I mean, as a guy who has written over 70 books, I know that trying to get things accomplished is a lot of pain. It's a lot of struggle, and you have to build a resolve. But people wanted greatness in 4 years. And while we had an economy that was growing in certain aspects, we really did not have any greatness in terms of substance, values, and character. Because when I look at the way people were treating each other, yes, we had economic profits, but morally and ethically, Americans are at an all-time low. I mean, I look at the way people made compromises as related to the media. I look at the way people have made numerous compromises as related to the state of journalism in this country. I mean, instead of us getting objective facts as related to reports in the media, we got this Trump obsession almost every day for the last 4 years. And every report from reputable sources from places like the New York Times, ABC News, I mean, USA Today, was not journalism. It was just, let's say bad things about Donald Trump. And that's one of the things that absolutely disgusted me, because our whole journalism system in this country has been compromised, And many of these media moguls really need to take a look at their media platforms, and they really need to look at the way they reported stories, because it was all about attacking Donald Trump, but not presenting facts to we the people. And that, I believe, was one of the things that really did a lot of damage during the COVID pandemic and led to thousands of people losing their lives, because these people were so caught up in their emotions about Donald Trump that they were not thinking about reporting on this virus in an objective way to help the American people be safe during this pandemic. Everything was about sensationalizing the virus and getting people into a panic and a frenzy and getting people so terrified that they would practically in creating tension in places out here. And I said to myself, this reporting, it's yellow, it's unethical. I mean, you should be trying to help people during this period of this pandemic be able to remain calm and set a course to keep themselves safe. But the media, it just really just reported stuff in a sensationalist way to get people scared so that they can make Donald Trump the scapegoat, when we don't really want to look at it from an objective perspective and look at the WHO and how they mishandled things. We don't want to look at Dr. Fauci and his constant flip-flopping. And we really don't want to look at how this led to people becoming, again, caught up in this frenzy. And this frenzy was about getting people scared, so people would make Donald Trump into the ultimate bad guy here in the States. And as I see it, yes, your Donald Trump is a loudmouth. Your Donald Trump really wasn't qualified to be president, but this was the man you picked, and you were willing to put people's lives at risk in a pandemic. And again, that to me is one of the most unethical things I have ever seen from our government. I mean, this was one of the most unethical things I ever saw in my life, to just say, oh, we're so caught up in our feelings about this guy that we're not thinking about people's safety and their health, and we're willing to go out here and practically implode an economy in order to get back at this guy. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that mean girls in junior high school do to other girls that they don't like. And it was sad to see this being out here in that dark mirror of we the people. So that was one of the things that really saddened me. And when I looked at it, it was like everybody wanted to just get another candidate in there to replace your Donald Trump. But the problem isn't Donald Trump. The problem is we the people. And the problem is we the people don't want to take that look at ourselves and see how we have not progressed and how we have stalled. And in some ways, I see we're on a vicious cycle. So when I look at the American people, and again, thinking that going back to hope and change is going to lead to America getting back on track, I can see a vicious cycle setting up, because the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. And this is insane to think, oh, the Obama presidency, which really was a complete failure when you look at it, how is going back to the vice president under Barack Obama going to lead to progress for America? That's a vicious cycle as I see it. And it's completely insane to go back to a guy who was working with the other guy who created policies that flatlined and stagnated an economy, and then believe you're going to move forward. This was very similar to what happened with Walter Mondale and Ronald Reagan back in 1984. I mean, Walter Mondale was Jimmy Carter's vice president, and he wanted to take us back to the policies of Jimmy Carter when Ronald Reagan had managed to get the country moving forward. And that's why we got a Reagan landslide in 84. But most Americans, they don't understand that in order to progress, you have to deal with pain. And pain is the only way you're going to grow, because when you acknowledge where you're going wrong, then you can take that critical look at yourself and start to make changes in your life. Unfortunately, most Americans think that they're making change with Joe Biden, but they're actually staying in the same place. And they're making the same mistake over and over again. So this isn't about Republican or Democrat. This is about we, the American people, really taking that examination of self. And we haven't taken that examination of self over the course of these 4 years with Donald Trump. They're looking at it as, oh, he was a racist, and they're projecting it on him. But the problem, again, is us, and we don't want to take a look at us, and we don't really want to take a look at our country. And our country, it's in the state that it's in because of we the people. Again, if you look at the first three words of the U.S. Constitution, you will see where the problem is, because when I look at it, it's like going back from one guy to the other doesn't lead to change. It just leads to codependency. And for a Black American man, I look at it as this presidency is not going to be a good one for us, with the guy who wrote the 94 crime bill in the executive branch, and his vice president, the woman who persecuted Black men, is the vice president. So Black men, this is not a good place for us right now. And we are not going to get anything tangible from this government. I mean, people thought they were going to get something from Donald Trump. He gave you nothing, but this guy is going to give you oppression, and it's his policy that his policies are not going to be beneficial to Black people. I mean, we didn't get anything from, the Obama presidency, didn't get anything directly from the Trump presidency. We did get something indirectly because of his policies on immigration, because that led to people being forced to hire Black people. But I look at this one, and again, I see that American people don't want to look at themselves, and they don't want to get off the hamster wheel. They want to get back on the hamster wheel. They want to avoid looking at themselves, and they want to avoid dealing with the fact that the issues in this country, especially those as related to racism, are prevalent. They have not changed since the days of Lyndon Johnson, when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I mean, nothing has really changed as related to things in this country as related to race. And even after the murder of George Floyd, we see no real efforts to make change. We just see people tap dancing around the issue, and then trying to gaslight people into believing, oh, George Floyd was the bad guy, but the policies that were created and the culture that was created is the problem, and nobody wants to really do anything about the culture, because the woke types passively, they include things, but aggressively, they take shots at we the people. So that's another thing that I have a problem with, because you talk about inclusion on one side, but we don't see any heterosexual Black men. We don't see any images of heterosexual Black families, and we don't see the Black father being represented in anything. But we're told it's all about inclusion because it's all about alphabets, but not about Black men and Black families. So that's a problem for me, but that's another video. But when I look at this election, people, they're thinking, oh, things are going to get better under Biden. But no, it's not going to get better, because we the people have serious issues as related to our mental health. We're not dealing with our issues as related to the foundation of this country. We're not dealing with the issues as related to why people are behaving the way that they're behaving. And we're not dealing with the psychological aspects of racism. I mean, these are things that keep rising to the surface, And instead, what they're doing is, instead of confronting them, they're avoiding them. And when I look at the way we handled COVID-19, it just shows me, how twisted people are becoming, because instead of looking out for the health of the country, they're just looking to use this virus as a way to move ahead. And that just shows me how twisted the health of the country is mentally, that you had people politicizing this virus, willing to put people's health at risk across this country, and literally lead to the deaths of thousands of people, all because somebody is upset about a man who went out here and ran for president. And which is everybody's constitutional right, because the Constitution states that all of the qualifications for being a president is being 35 years of age, and anybody can run for president. But this man runs for president, and we've made him into a monster. But what's really sad is we haven't really looked at the monster we have become, because that's the dark reflection in the mirror no one wants to look at, especially on the left and the right. No one wants to look at the monster we've become over the last 4 years. I mean, I look at places like Google and Facebook and Twitter and how they were censoring people. I mean, if this is supposed to be the new media, I mean, that flies in the face of everything Benjamin Franklin did when he opened up the newspaper during the 1770s, when you have Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Google censoring people for having conservative views. And you have, I mean, our Constitution is supposed to be about free speech and freedom of expression, but we see, oh, you can only express yourself if you have if you only fit certain narratives, certain viewpoints, certain opinions. And that's not what our Constitution is supposed to be about. I mean, free speech is supposed to be about protecting speech we don't like. But over the last 4 years, we've seen your tech going out here looking to censor speech that they don't like. And that's going to put a lot of people's lives at risk, like during the days of the robber barons, where you had these rich industrialists who didn't want to talk about things like men falling into the vats of things like Durham's pure beef lard. I mean, we're not getting objective journalism anymore. And that should trouble anybody who, like myself, is a publisher, because that means we're not getting free speech and freedom of expression. And again, because people don't want to look in the dark mirror and see the truth about our country and how far away it has gone from the ideals of our Constitution. We're just so caught up in our emotions about one man, but we can't see how we have changed and how we've changed into someone who is, again, not a reflection of the best ideals of our Constitution. We've changed into this dark and twisted monster, and that's the society we've created, we the people. I mean, we've created this dark and twisted reflection of ourselves. And if you want to really do something to make change in a Biden presidency, you're going to have to look at that dark reflection reflected out at you. You're going to have to look at that picture of this country and what it's become and really examine it. Because when I examine it and I examine the way people have just become so bitter, so mean, so hostile towards each other, and how we don't really even respect each other anymore. I mean, it used to be if somebody put up a difference of opinion, people would just scroll past it and move on. But these days, people become berserk when they see a difference of opinion, and they want to actually get to the point where they're going crazy about those opinions that are represented to them. So that's really troubling. Again, in a country where we're supposed to have free speech, people, they can't even disagree or have a discourse. They have to go into ad hominems and go into name calling. I mean, that shows how our society has declined and how people don't really see how things have gotten really bad. And on the state of our economy, where we're not really thinking about how our economy, we used to look out for our people. We used to look out for our American workers. We used to stand up and put Americans first. And people think that that's a racist thing, but no, every other country puts their people first. And we, the people, have to start thinking, hey, we've got to put our people first if we want to build a strong country. And that has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That has to do with us. I mean, that has to do with who we are. I mean, you can't look at everybody else's problems. You have to look at your own problems. And if you don't take care of your own people, it's like Jesus said, you're worse than an infidel. And sadly, many American businesses are worse than infidels because they don't look at our people and take care of them first. I mean, if this is such a great country, why are our veterans homeless? Why are many of our men homeless? I mean, we should be taking care of those guys and getting them back on their feet. Because as I see it, the American man, I mean, he's the backbone of the country, because if he's not in a good place mentally, he's not in a good place emotionally, then you're not going to have anybody to build the country and build the civilization to become more technically advanced than the previous century. And we're not doing a good job of taking care of our men because we've got these woke types who want to elevate everybody else, not understanding that God created the man first and he made the man to be the leader and the steward. And if your leader and your steward is not there to take responsibility for things, then everything is going to fall apart. And that's where I look at things for the country, again, from the dark reflection. We want to try to go out here and talk about things as related to making the country great. But if you don't build your men up, how can you get a great country? Because they don't have things like work ethic. They don't have things like discipline. They don't have things like character. And I talk about, again, those things in my book, The Man Crisis, because that's the thing that I think we need a president to focus on, is this man crisis, which continuously gets worse with each passing generation. I mean, we've got 3 generations of men in crisis, and we didn't get any sort of address to it to a Donald Trump, and Joe Biden is talking about everything else but the man crisis. And again, I don't see us getting much change as related to things. I just see us on a vicious cycle. So if you want to pick up a copy of The Man Crisis, you can pick up a copy there. But as I was sitting there, watching this election go on, I just was deeply saddened because this was a turn for the worst for the American people. I mean, this was the worst election I have ever experienced in my life. And I thought the Hillary Trump one was pretty bad. I mean, no good debating skills. I mean, I watched Joe Biden and Donald Trump in those debates, and neither one really presented arguments to what direction they wanted to take the country in, what goals they wanted to accomplish. And I really was deeply saddened by that. And this whole election, people were voting on emotion, not really voting on an issue. And most people were so caught up in Donald Trump that it was all about getting a victory against him. But it's like I stated in my classic video, America's Pyrrhic victory. People were so caught up in defeating Donald Trump and investing resources in defeating Donald Trump that they don't see how much they lost. And they lost in terms of intangibles as related to America's moral compass. They lost as related to the intangibles of ethics. They lost in terms of the compromises we made to our American press, in that instead of us being objective journalists, we've become yellow journalists who present opinion as news instead of presenting fact as news. And we've gone out here and we don't even know how to present science objectively, because when I look at the way the pandemic was handled, we really did not get science presented objectively. We had people telling us, oh, listen to the science, but you have to temper that with discipline, and you have to temper that with the needs of the people. Because to say, oh, we just listen to the science, that's what a nerd does, because a nerd is so emotional about the numbers and the statistics that he cannot see the human cost. And that's where I had an issue with their whole theory with Dr. Fauci and this flatten the curve, because you were not thinking about the human cost as related to we the people. Because yes, you shut down those so-called non-essential businesses, but when you did that, you destroyed the lives of over 300 million people. And you destroyed people's lives to the point where many small businesses could never return, because those people, even though they got Paycheck Protection Program, that wasn't going to cover their bills, because many businesses, they run day to day, and many people lost their jobs and they would never get those jobs back. And this flew over the heads of many of those people in Washington who were all about statistics like a nerd would be as related to flattening the curve, not understanding they were flattening the lives of millions of people, and those people would not be able to ever come back. Then you walk out on those people, and instead of giving them a second stimulus and taking responsibility, you abandon those people. And that was one of the things that absolutely disgusted me, is how the American people were practically abandoned for over 3 months. I mean, we're still abandoned as these people still continue to bicker and argue like a codependent divorced couple. They're still bickering and arguing. And the American people, they're still trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to get their stay in their homes, and how they're going to stay in their apartments, all while everybody's in their feelings about Donald Trump, instead of saying, look, you may not like this guy, but he was elected, and you don't punish the people because they elected somebody you don't like. I mean, this is about meeting the needs of we the people, and we didn't get our needs met. I mean, this is the thing that flew over most people's heads. They're thinking, oh, it's going to change, but no, it's not going to change, because you were put last, and when you get put last, you will be dead before you get your needs met last. And the American people, sadly, didn't understand you have to make demands to get put first. And if you want to get put first, you're going to have to make demands of your government, because the government is supposed to serve we the people. But that was the thing that was sad about the dark reflection. We see we're not getting served by our country. Our country just does not serve our best interests. And this election shows us that we are last in the eyes of our own government. And when you have your government not serving the people, that's when you are in a bad place. And that's where you're nearly on the brink of a revolution, because that's how we got the United States in the first place, because the king was serving his own interests, and he wasn't serving the interests of the colonists, and the colonists wanted to revolt. And that's what I'm seeing with things like these COVID lockdowns and all of these other policies. These guys are serving their own best interests, trying to sate their own egos, talking about how they're protecting us, but we need protection from them and their oppressive policies, because they're not thinking about the average Joe trying to pay his bills, the average Joe trying to look for work, the average Joe trying to make a living. They are so caught up in their ideals, they have forgotten real people. So that's the big problem with this whole election cycle, is that we've gotten a lot of people who think that they are, doing something, but it's doing nothing. And again, that's not going to lead to change. It's just a vicious cycle that repeats itself. And this is something that I'm seeing Looks like we have a troll here who wants to cause trouble. And we have a problem because, people don't want to really acknowledge what the real problem is as related to our country. And this is something that people don't want to deal with as related to our Constitution. We really don't want to deal with things as related to how far we've strayed from our Constitution. We really don't want to look at ourselves, and we don't really want to look at how things are. And we really don't want to look at who we've become, and we really don't want to look at where we're going. I mean, when I look at where America is going, it's really going in a bad direction. And we've got a lot of these people who think that they're right, the cancel culture types, the woke types. They are just they're a complete wreck. They just so caught up in ideals they can't see real people. And when you can't see real people in reality, that's a really bad thing. But as somebody who can see reality and see real people and see real people suffering, I look at everything and I see what they're going to do. And after January 21st, everything's going to be, it's all Trump's fault. But no, it's not all Trump's fault. It's the fault of we the people, because we don't know what direction we want to go in. We don't know what course we want to set. And it's a shame because we are in a great place technologically, but it seems like we don't have our head on straight as related to what type of human beings we want to be in this technologically advanced society. And that's really the biggest shame about things, is that we don't really know who we want to be or where we want to be. And we have people who aren't really looking at it. Thank you, Kevin, for the super chat. If you want to donate to the super chat, you can do so. He says, "Get woke, go broke." And yeah, the woke people, they're so busy pushing their ideals, they don't understand that there's real dollars and real money as related to business, and they don't understand the reality of what's going on, as related to things. And if you also want to donate to the Cash App, you can donate to the Cash App, and that helps the channel a lot. That's related to things, so that's something else you can do. But I wanted to get on here, let people know I was still around, because the last couple of days they've been really hard because of the passing of my sister. It's a really rough period, but I wanted people to know I was still here, and I'm still going to be making videos on this channel. And I just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys, for a minute, and let you know I was all right and everything. Also, I'll talk more about Eternal Night on Friday, see. But I really some guys wanted me to talk about the 2020 election, but I don't really see America winning. I see America really losing, because it doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. We're losing, and we're losing because we the people don't want to take that painful look at ourselves, and we don't want to really take that painful look at what we're doing to ourselves, and we don't want to do the hard work that leads to change. Thank you, Queen Jet Black, for the condolences, and thank everybody else for the condolences. But as a guy who's been through change, and I know how painful change is, and if you don't want to make the sacrifices, you're not going to grow, you're not going to change at all. And what it looks like to me is Americans, they want greatness, but they don't want to go through the pain and make the sacrifices to achieve that greatness. And because many people are afraid to go through the pain of dealing with a Donald Trump, they want to go back to the comfort of a Joe Biden and think that that's going to lead to growth. But as somebody who had to do the work myself, I'll tell you that you're not going to grow by sitting there trying to go back. All you're going to do is wind up stagnating, and then you're going to wind up going nowhere, and you're actually going to get worse, because if you don't want to put that work in and go through that pain, you're not going to get better. I mean, I see some people, like in the Black community, they are putting in the work to get better. And you have brothers out here who are saying, you know, they want a Black agenda. And these days now, thanks to guys like Professor Black Truth and Jason Black, and you have guys talking differently, especially in David Carroll. They're talking about going in a different direction. And that's a good thing because they want to go out here and change. But that's a long road, and it's not going to be something that can be easily fixed by going along with a guy like a Ice Cube or a P. Diddy, a celebrity guy. We're going to have to do that hard work. And we're going to have to roll up our sleeves, you're going to have to just take the sleeve and roll it up and get ready to go do some work. And that's what Americans are going to have to do. But a lot of Americans, they don't want to go out here and, put that work in. They're looking to, get it easy like a Donald Trump talks about, but they don't want to go out here and grind. And if you want your society to change, you want things to be better, you have to go out here and get your Constitution, look at those first 3 words, and get ready to put the work in, because the only way to get a country to be great is to look at those first 3 words of the Constitution and understand that the job of making your country great isn't a Joe Biden's job. It isn't a Donald Trump's job. It is the job of we the people. I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's impromptu live stream. I'm hoping to be on Gavin Richards' live stream tomorrow, so that's one you want to watch. It's going to be 9 p.m. You can go to his channel, gboot2786, and I will be on that channel. You can sub to his channel. He definitely needs more views, and his channel has some really great, fantastic videos from different guests. So thank you, Christ Rules All 2, for the super chat. Thank you for showing your condolences to my sister. She would greatly appreciate it if she was here. She is here. I mean, she's in heaven. So, but I really thank you for coming out and giving me that super chat. But I wanted you guys to know I was still here and still doing things. And I'm still out here trying to, get books out here like Eastine Blast from the Past. Again, this one features the first SJS Direct comic, and you definitely want to pick this one up if you want to see how I write comics. Bill Walko did a fantastic job on the art. And you definitely want to get this one in paperback because this one has the comic inside. So this one is available on Amazon right now in paperback, and you'll be able to get it on Kindle on Black Friday. And that'll help be able to get more books out there. Thank you, Computer Robots, for the super. And thank you for the condolences. And you can get The Man Crisis on Amazon.com. So I'm in the middle. I wasn't really too active politically on, watching election coverage and stuff like that, because I didn't want to get too emotionally involved with things. I wanted to step back and be objective about things. So I look at it, the election, as no hope, no change. Like David Carroll says, no hope, no change for the Negro. Well, I say no hope of making America great again, or no hope of rebuilding America better. So I don't see us moving forward. I see us on a vicious cycle, and we the people have to get our heads straight if we want to break free of that vicious cycle. So I want to thank everybody again for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there on Friday, where I'll be talking about racism in the comic book industry.